Welcome to our presentation today. I write the songs. My name is Mary Varakis, and I'm Program Manager for Programs for 50 Plus at the Chang School of Continuing Education. Before we get started, we want to pay our respects to the Indigenous peoples, elders, and ancestors who stewarded and cared for the nature and people who lived on land where Ryerson is located today. At the university, we have made a deep and long commitment to truth and reconciliation. I invite you to learn more about this online and in person next time that we get together on campus, which I hope will be soon. Now, I'd like to go over just a few items so that you know how to participate in today's presentation. Please ensure that your microphone is muted throughout the workshop so that you are not disturbing other attendees and the presenters. If you do decide to leave your video on throughout the presentation, please be mindful of your actions as your camera is visible to everyone who is attending this workshop. You will have the opportunity to submit any questions that you have by text through typing the questions into the comments panel, the comments pane rather, of our control panel. You can send in your questions when prompted by the presenters of today's workshop to do so. And any questions that are submitted outside of this will be addressed at the end. We're going to have a brief Q&A session and we'll be able to get to everyone's questions hopefully today. I would like to now introduce you to Sina Falla and Sunny Chan, who are our presenters for today's workshop. Sina Falla is the Music Education Coordinator at Ryerson University's Smart Lab. He is also a composer, a singer, a guitar picker, and a violinist. Sunny Chan holds a PhD in digital poetics, is a poetry reviewer for Canadian literature, and a creative writer who has been published in various publications, magazines, and journals, including Abyss and Apex, Barrel House Press, The Puritan, and more. Please join me in welcoming Sunny and Sina. Thank you.
Hi, Mary. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And neither Sina nor I have done a workshop via Zoom before, so this is very exciting for both of us. Can I just check if anyone wants to try typing into the chat function? Can I check that you can all see my screen now? Wonderful. Perfect. Okay, so welcome to the workshop. Thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate it. Mary has already introduced both of us wonderfully, so we just both want to also thank the Chang School of Continuing Education's Programs for 50 Plus and Community Engagement for allowing us this opportunity to speak with all of you fine folks today. So before we get started, I just want to mention, and Sina and I both agreed we're going to mention this multiple times, this is just a very introductory an hour and a half workshop on how to begin the concept of songwriting. So keep in mind that we're sticking with the basics for a reason, and also obviously that we can't write a Grammy award-winning song in an hour and a half, especially if we've never done it before. So that's about the level that we're aiming for here, and hopefully that will still be a lot of fun and you'll still learn a lot even if you have experience. So we're just going to begin by talking about the two main concepts of our workshop today. So basically, what is poetry and what are lyrics? What is poetry and what does it mean when we set it to music? And I just want to explain why I'm not putting this in presentation mode, because I think someone already asked. I'm keeping it in the edit mode because there's going to be quite a few slides where it'll be interactive and I'll be putting your thoughts and your contributions into the slide. So I want to be able to type into it so that we can all see our brainstorming. So that's why I'm staying in this pane. Make it bigger. How about, oh, that's too big. Zoom out. Is that okay? That's the biggest I can make it while it still fits on the screen. Okay, all right. So we're just going to begin by talking really broadly about what is poetry and what are lyrics. So poetry can be really broadly defined as a way of using language that pays more attention to certain qualities of language than you would in normal or regular non-poetic text. So when you and I are talking, or when we're reading prose, when we're reading novels, we're generally not paying attention to things like our rhythm, our rhyme, how words sound in our mouth or how they look on the page, or you know, symbolism, how they're arranged, things like that. We are usually more worried about just getting our meaning across. But with poetry, we're paying heightened attention to things beyond just the meaning of the words. Sina, do you want to take the lyrics part?
Sure. Sorry about this. Thank you, Sunny. Thanks everyone for coming. I'll just quickly run over the lyrics portion. So again, I'll try to make this as general as possible. Lyrics are essentially words that go along with the music, but as we know, this is highly relative to the genre of music that we're talking about. Some genres are very lyric focused to a point where the accompaniment is definitely secondary to what's being said, and some genres are very instrumental focused. So that's why I have the example of scatting there, meaning that sometimes you have lyrics that are, it's not just the words used, but the contents of that is being conveyed through the words. But sometimes it's really just using letters and sounds from a language to create, to sort of substitute an instrument, essentially, which is what scatting is. So as far as I'm concerned, lyric is anything in our linguistic form that goes along with a musical backing. And I'll just leave it at that for now.
Great, thank you. Obviously, we're going to return back to those ideas. Thank you, Zina. So just as a little warm up and for us to get to know each other, go ahead and type into the chat if you've discovered the chat box. Let's just share with each other, for those of you who are comfortable sharing, what your experience is with either poetry or lyrics or songwriting. So it might be that you've read poetry, or obviously you've heard songs. It might be that you've written some before. So whatever it is that you consider your experience with these concepts, just take a moment to type into the comment section and share that with us. And we'll just give like 1 minute for this. This is also a good way for us to practice how the rest of the interaction will happen so that we can work out any kinks early. Wonderful. Someone studied poetry in a university. Me too. Some have written. Some are just very interested. Some's complete newbies, no experience. Wonderful. Huge breadth of experience. I love this. Some have written already. Rachel has written some bad angsty poetry, haven't we all? That's one of the beautiful things about poetry, is that you can really get out a lot of feelings without judgment, except when you look back at it yourself. Some people play music, wonderful. Lots of people have read and listened. Georgia, wonderful, studied, taught, and read poetry. Woman after my own heart. Okay, great, yeah. Really interesting. Ooh, someone was a rapper in a band and written 10 songs. That's fantastic. It's a highly poetic way of working with language. Okay, great. So I'm just gonna start winding down and stop looking at the comments for a moment. Feel free to keep sharing if you'd like for the rest of the group to see. But I just wanted to mention what I've noticed is that there's a wide range of experiences. Almost everybody has read and listened to music and poetry. Some have dabbled, some have written it seriously, some have done it as a hobby. So this is fantastic. We did design this workshop to be accessible to all levels. So that does mean that we're going to explain maybe some really basic concepts that some of you with more experience might already know, but hopefully you're still going to be able to take something away. I think for me personally, the most interesting part of working with Sina to collaborate on this is the idea of collaborative writing, which is not something that a lot of us do. So the idea, and Sina just brought this up yesterday, it's sort of like the old classic music writers were lyrics and a lyricist and a musician pair, right? Like he brought up the famous Rodgers and Hammerstein example. So even if you have a ton of experience and you consider yourself, you know, a seasoned poet or seasoned songwriter, I think today we're going to experience something a bit special because we're doing it with 47 other people, which I don't think anyone ever does. So fantastic. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start really simple. Because we have an hour and a half to create a brand new song together, Sina and I decided constraint and structure is what's going to help us. So I have chosen an example of a very set form of a verse called a limerick. A set form means that it's a type of poem that always has the same pattern. So I'm just gonna let you have a minute to read over these 3 examples of limericks. I'll just be quiet and let you read them and then bring up some further questions. All right, and just based on me having read them, I'm going to assume we're winding down, we're finishing up reading. You can hop back onto the chat function and let's just start throwing out observations about these limericks. So what do you notice about them? It can be anything. Tell me, what do you notice about the form, about the rhyming, about the feeling you get when reading them, anything that sticks out to you about either the form or these 3 specific poems. Short, sweet, and cute, wonderful. The first 2 lines have a specific meter, then the next 2 lines have their own, and then the last line ties back with the first 2. Exactly. So someone has called it AABBAA. That's how we sort of phrase rhyme schemes in poetry. So if the first 2 lines are A, if the first line ends with an A, the second line also ends with an A. The next 2 lines end with a different rhyme, so we call those B and B, but then the last line ends with the same rhyme as the first 2, so AABBA. Right, there's a pattern, very formulaic, there's also a certain rhythm, and they're fun, which is honestly a really important observation about them. There's the fact that that something is short already gives you a kind of feeling about them, right? So even something like the difference between a 5-page poem and a 5-line poem can sort of give you certain feelings associated with them. Things that are short tend to be cuter, they tend to be punchier, they tend to be catchier, right? So wonderful observations. The lyrics all connect. Yeah. And you'll notice that the very first one is a famous nursery rhyme. Lots of children have heard it. So it's a very common form for children, especially when they're just starting to learn things about language, right? They're easy to remember, you like to repeat them. It helps them learn things about how English works within itself. Yep, they have a certain meter. I think it's the opposite of iambic is the meter. I also forget the name of the meter. It's the one where the first syllable is emphasized and then every other one is emphasized. I think that's getting into details we don't need right now, but great that we're noticing things about meter. So in case I'm using words some of you haven't heard before, meter is the set rhythm of stresses in syllables in a poem. Okay, so wonderful. We're noticing rhyme, we're noticing pattern. Anapeptic, yes. Anapestic? Yes. that is definitely it. Thank you, Rachel. So we're noticing things about the rhyme, the rhythm, the feeling they give us, the kind of style that they have. Any observations about the content at all before we move on? Whimsical, that's a great word. Nonsense, okay, yeah. Yes, there's a lot of talking animal imagery and a sort of randomness to them, which I think ties back into their historical use of being to entertain and educate children about language. Okay, perfect. Witty. Yes, there is this sort of punchline effect at the end of a lot of them. There's a story going on, and then that last sentence is sort of like, boom, here's what's funny about it, or here's how it wraps up, how it concludes. Wonderful. Two people said the word moral, like the conclusion sort of tells you what you're supposed to think of it. Wonderful, okay. See lots of nodding in the folks who have their videos on. Okay, great. So it feels like we're getting a good sense of what the limerick is. Now, I do want to also point out that just because that's what they typically are doesn't mean that's what they always have to be. And in fact, knowing that that's what they're typically used for, it also gives you the option of using them for something else and then surprising people, right? So if you know that a limerick is usually whimsical and fun, kind of nonsensical, tells a story that's appropriate for children, then you can feel free to do the opposite of that and surprise your listener, right? If you can write something really dark and meaningful, or historically, some people have taken the limerick form and written really sort of sexually debauched rhymes with them as a way to play with the form and surprise people. So yeah, keep that in mind, is that expectations gives you a lot of options to play with your audience. So the next slide is just me summarizing what I had hoped that you would notice about the limericks. A lot of you pointed these out already. And oh, one thing I did mention is also line length. So we talked about meter. We didn't really talk about length, but that's another thing that you can play with in poetry. So we have the two longer first lines, the two shorter middle lines, and then the line at the end being the same as the first two. So same with A, A, B, B, A. So we are actually going to be writing our own limerick today together, all of us creating one. Feel free to also write your own on the side in a notebook if you have it, but we are going to attempt to collaboratively create one together. You can write more if you'd like. We're going to try to do one together. We'll see how it works. This is an experiment. Like I said, the reason we're doing it is because it's an easy way to get started, especially if you've never written a poem or a song before. It has constraints, so it allows you to focus your creativity on just a few things like word choice and rhyme, rather than worrying about other things like what kind of form do I want, right? So we're gonna create one together, and then we're gonna set it to song that you also will help collaboratively write. Before we do that, we're gonna have to choose several things before we start choosing words. So there are gonna be things that we need to think about when we want to write something that creates a reaction from people. So let's go over really quickly what these concepts are. They're things that you can notice or create in a poem. Oh, some people already have suggestions. Hold off for just a second because I need to not look at the chat box yet. I'm just going to really quickly explain for folks who haven't written themselves before just what these categories are. So let's not get too far ahead of them. So mood and tone are often used interchangeably. They are actually slightly different. We don't need to get into that. The idea is just like my example gave, many of those poems tended to be happy or funny in a way. So the mood and the tone is what is internally within the poem. The effect is what externally is happening outside the poem to the reader. So a funny tone can create the effect, or it has the purpose of making somebody laugh. The subject matter is sort of what the content of the poem is, what the poem is about. So my examples here are a happy tone with the purpose of making someone laugh by being about an embarrassing memory, right? Super simple. So again, there's a lot of you and there's one of me looking at the chat. So we're gonna do this systematically. Let's brainstorm a few moods or tones. I'm gonna write as many as I can see, and then we're gonna choose like the top one out of those somehow. Like I said, it's an experiment. So let's start listing some moods or tones that a poem could have, or that a poem you wanna write today could have. Again, use the chat box. Oof, okay. Silly, happy, sarcastic. Nostalgic. This is going so much faster. Okay, okay. I'm not choosing this based on any sort of sense of favoritism. I'm choosing this based on what I can see when I'm in this window. Okay, I'm not missing that many. Okay, awesome. Okay, someone has suggested something that I think would fit better as subject matter rather than tone. So I'm gonna put it in that category. Outrageous. Okay, let's leave it at that for now. If you think of a brilliant idea that you really want to make sure you get on there, flag me somehow, we'll come back to it. I want to move on to purpose or effect. So what do you want your poem to do to a reader or a listener of your song when they see it or when they hear it? These are all great mood tone words, by the way. Oh, sorry. Oh no, okay, I have too many windows open and I no longer know where Zoom is. There we are, okay. To make them laugh, to change them, to uplift them, okay. Fantastic. Make it meaningful and powerful, to help them, wonderful. Help, inspire, rebirth and get it done. Move them, okay. Change themselves and their attitude. Okay, I'm gonna collapse those two. Connection, I like that one a lot. Okay, look on the bright side, take action, motivation. Okay, I'm gonna get you to pause on that one so that I can have a time to catch up. Okay. This is making me really miss my double monitors in my office, by the way. You wouldn't be hearing these long pauses if I had my two monitors, but okay, perfect. I'm happy with this list. We're gonna move on to the last column, which is the subject matter. So what do we want our poem to be about? So I saw one earlier that said, oops, oh boy, how do I have two Zoom windows open? Okay, that was weird. I saw one earlier that talked about a concept we actually in poetry called sympathetic weather. So the phrase was sort of seeing a sunny day and getting out of a cloudy one. It's a very common tool in poetry to use weather to talk about mood. So I'm just going to put a more general word, weather, to sort of cover that whole concept. But let's see, other suggestions for, okay, racism and mental health. I remember coronavirus. Someone was very early with that suggestion. Okay. I'm going to use the scientifically correct term, COVID-19. I also saw comfort, which I like a lot. Okay. Any other suggestions? Goodness, these are deep topics, by the way, which I am intrigued by, because to write a limerick about something quite deep, I think is a fun, it's fun. It's what I was talking about before. It's unexpected. Quirky behavior, being closed up at home. Okay. All right. Now, challenging times. Okay, I'm starting to see a theme here. So I think choosing the subject matter might be a bit easier, and we're going to work backwards from there, because a lot of these have similar theme going on, right? So we're talking about our current time, also in a way that maybe could transcend this time, and when people look back at our song years from now, even when they're not going through a quarantine, they might be able to relate in other ways. So I think mental health, being stuck at home, COVID-19, even quirky behavior, challenging times, those are all sort of could be made into one topic, adapting to change as well. So I think we're going to make an executive decision that that's going to be the vibe of our poem. So it's going to be generally about the difficult time of being stuck at home, and that will be our subject matter. Okay, so we now have to decide, do we want a poem about that subject matter, I guess, to be uplifting, to help someone? Do we want it to inspire them, motivate them to a certain action? Do we want it to be comforting? What do we think? Okay, I don't know how we're gonna vote on that. I'm going to give you 20 seconds to type in the chat, if you have a strong feeling about it, what you think a poem about these current difficult times should do. More humorous. Surprise. Oh, surprise. Someone wants me to just choose and force you to do it. Okay, comfort. Comforting. Okay, we have 2 votes for comfort. Okay, let's say comfort, uplift, and motivate, because they're sort of in the same family. So let's say, okay, a poem about these difficult times we're currently in, that's meant to sort of comfort and uplift at the same time. And out of this tone, I guess hopeful is the one that feels like it fits the most out of everything we've said. Okay, so let's do it. We're gonna, unite is also a really great word. Okay. So we're going to write a limerick, which again, I'm going to be intrigued by. Limericks aren't usually about something so big. We're going to write a limerick with a hopeful tone that is meant to both comfort and maybe inspire people to get through these difficult times currently. Wonderful, I love it. So I'm going to quickly type that as our target. So it's going to be a hopeful poem to uplift and comfort about current difficult times. Okay, I have a very loose structure here for a possible limerick. They're just common things. It's really here as just a placeholder, because I need to put something in the slide. We don't have to start with there once was a. It's just a really common way to start a limerick. We can start it in other ways if you'd like. If anyone has strong ideas about what the first line should be, or actually, I think the easier way to do this would be this. I'm going to decide what the first few words are going to be. Today, we is what I want it to begin with, because that already to me feels like we're in it together, which I think can be a good way to start off in a comforting way. So start giving me suggestions, and the very first line is the easiest one. Oh, a family who lived is also. I'll keep that in mind. Start giving me suggestions for what you want, where you want the first line to end with. This is going to, you don't know how to write it all? Don't worry about it. There's so many people in this chat. Someone's going to write something that will make you react, and then you can just start responding to them. Is usually how collaborative writing works. Okay. Okay. A family who lived down the street is a potentially, okay, I don't have enough screens for this, so I'm gonna start writing on paper. But I will let you know potential first lines. We can decide. Today we fear an invisible enemy. My only beautiful line, my only issue with that is enemy is hard to rhyme. And we are trying to go A. So same with clarity. So Julie already has 5 lines that rhyme. I would say possibly keep that in your paper next to you, because we're gonna try to write one together and you're just ahead of the curve right now. Ooh, they came to write a poem is a good one. Okay. I do have a soft spot for poetry about poetry. I found a way to spend my time. Oh, I like all of these so much. We're gonna have to write like 12. Good luck, Sina. You're gonna have to write a whole opera. There once was a virus called COVID. Yeah, I'm worried that could turn into a very jokey one. Okay, you know what? These are all so beautiful. Again, I'm not picking favorites. I'm picking one based on both how it fits and also because I think it'll be easier to rhyme. So you have to sort of, in songwriting, you have to, if you already decided on a rhyme structure, you sort of have to think of ways to make it easy on yourself and pick words that can rhyme for this purpose. You can obviously write songs that don't rhyme as well. Okay. I really like the one that started, I found a way to spend my time. So if we're going with that as our first line, now we're gonna start thinking of words that rhyme with time. The world became one day. So I like that too. See, there's so many good ones. The second I say, let's start thinking within these constraints, everyone starts coming up with great ideas. Okay, so now the new target is words that rhyme with time. And if you want to put it into a whole line, that's fine too. But I can help get us there if you just have one word. And it does not cost a dime. Look at that. Oh, see, I like that a lot. Alone at home drinking wine, excellent. We are going for uplifting and hopeful. That's gonna take us a few ways to get there, but mine, ooh. See, keep these words in mind. Remember, our very last line is also going to have to rhyme with this first line. So keep your great ideas in mind because we might be able to come back to that. I see mine is a really good one. We call that a near rhyme. Moments are sublime. Mary, look at you. Okay, mountains to climb, that's a metaphor, excellent. So mine would be what we call a near rhyme. I love near rhymes. I think they make you think unexpected things, so I like that. Laura, the first line was, I should know, I found a way to spend my time was the first line. So that's what we're looking for. I like the one that said about not costing a dime. So is dreaming a crime? Keep that in mind too for the last line possibly. See, these are all so good. You folks are fantastic. Okay, I'm going to go with it does not cost a dime just because we are getting short on time. I don't want to eat into our music time. So let's just decide, and it does not cost a dime. Middle 2 lines, we're going to talk about 2 shorter, different nouns. So what do we want to talk about? Remember, our target is hopeful, uplifting, comforting about our current times. So start us off, throw out anything that does not rhyme with time anymore. So we need a new rhyme. It doesn't rhyme with the word time or dime. And it's about the topic of how we're spending our time these days. Hopefully it was really quite simple. Oh, that's good. Okay. And keep that in mind. We're gonna have to write with simple, and I don't want anyone talking about popping pimples. Okay. Right. Simple. Smile, that's a good way. Okay, I kept my smile. Smile. Outside is a good word because lots of things rhyme with outside. Smile would be a good word too. Cry, oh boy. Walk down the street. Street is a good one. So skies, really good one. Dancing. These are all great. Skies could be a near rhyme with outside already, so. Let's see. Okay. Dancing might be a hard one. Okay, executive decision. I'm going to choose, I kept my smile because you folks are a little advanced here. Some of you are giving amazing suggestions. I want to see what happens if I give you a word that's slightly harder to rhyme, like smile. Okay, so if I kept my smile, it's 4 syllables, 4.5 syllables, depending on how you pronounce smile. What are some things that rhyme with smile that you can say in a line that's only 4 syllables long, 4 to 5 syllables long? It's been a while. Okay, I walked a mile. Yep, these are both good. I walked a mile. It's been a while. Despite this trial, ooh, I like that a lot. Also love the style ones. Again, not picking favorites. This is just the medium we're limited to. You know I liked Despite This Trial a lot though. Okay, so far as I found a way to spend my time and it does not cost a dime. I kept my smile despite this trial. Now we're gonna do a concluding rhyme that rhymes with time again. I think it would be fair to the reader or the listener of the song. Well, actually, you decide. So it says, I found a way to spend my time, and then it talks about you smiling. It doesn't really say what that way actually was. So I was originally going to say, it might be fair to tell them what the way was, but you can decide to withhold that information, and it's a sort of very more open to interpretation song. More friends to dial. Oh, that was a previous one. Okay. The moment was so sublime. I like that because it has a sense of mysteriousness. Like, what moment? We still don't know exactly what that way was. You can read into that. Okay. Any other things that rhyme with time that we can use? You thought of really good ones earlier. Are there any ones that make sense to bring back? Slime. That would be a good punchline ending. Turns out the secret to happiness was snail slime. 2 people thought of crime at the same time. I think someone had a good line with the word crime earlier. I can't remember. Sure. Okay. So the whole poem so far is, I found a way to spend my time and it does not cost a dime. I kept my smile despite this trial. Something that rhymes with time. If you're saying, because the sun doth shine, I like that. Okay. Oh, I remember mine was a word that a lot of people came up with earlier. Also rhyme. Is dreaming a crime was the one that I thought of earlier that someone else said earlier that I was thinking of. Okay. This moment is all mine. I like that a lot. Okay. See, these are all so good. I hope you have been keeping track of your own thoughts while doing this because we're building one together and there is something about the process of doing things together and being forced to throw things away. But the things we're throwing away are all really great. So if this is like unlocking things in you, keep all of this. This is great for your files. Reflecting on a simple rhyme. So moments are sublime. See, I like so many of these so much. I was gonna go with the mine one because of my partialness to slang rhymes, but I like reflecting on a simple rhyme because it's about what we're doing today. And I'm basic like that sometimes. We are at exactly the time that I want to hand over to Sina. So I'm just going to decide and say this is going to be our limerick. Our finished limerick is, I found a way to spend my time, and it does not cost a dime. I kept my smile despite this trial, reflecting on a simple rhyme. This is fantastic. I think you can see a lot of the stuff I was talking about earlier. So the structure really gives you things to work within that allows you to channel your creativity into specific things. Deciding on what your poem, what effect and what you want your poem to be about gives you some direction so that you know what you're writing towards. The rhyme structure and the meter and the length of the line really gives you the sense of like rhythm that I think lends itself well to putting to music. And yeah, it sounds really good. I talked about how limericks are often for childish things or fun things, and this is really not. You know, it's about slightly deeper ideas. So I think that also has a sense of unexpectedness, and it complicates things for the reader, which I think is great. I like that it's clearly about this moment in time because we say this trial, but we don't say any details about it, so it can be broadly applicable to other things. I just think it's really beautiful. Great job, everyone. So that concludes the writing part of it. We're going to keep that limerick, and I'm going to put it at into a later slide on this workshop once Sina has taken over, so that we can have it to work against when we start setting things to music. But before we do that, Sina is also going to tell us the basics of music first. All right, Sina, I'm going to stop presenting, and then you can. I'm going to stop presenting.
Okay. No, I thought you were gonna stop something else. Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you so much.
Have I closed my presentation screen? Have I?
Yeah, it was closed. I was just wondering if you thought it was open.
I just can't tell sometimes. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna mute myself too. Thanks, everyone.
No, that was great. Thank you so much. What an amazing collaboration on the first try. And Sunny's right. There were so many good options. It's really hard to pick one. And as I'm reading the limerick, it's obvious to me that even in a couple of lines, you can definitely write something that's very meaningful and deep. So lots to cover. Let me just share my screen. Put that on the side. Okay. So again, I think this bears repeating because some folks were coming in a little bit later. If you have the basic knowledge of music, that's fantastic. I still think there's a lot for you to learn. But if you don't, please don't be intimidated by some of the stuff that I'm about to go over. Remember, Sunny and I are here to be guides along the way. The ideas are fundamentally coming collectively from everyone, but as far as how we navigate ourselves through writing the lyrics or poetry and the music, will be here. And the main reason for me to go over these technicalities is so that you're aware that whatever music we listen to, even if it's a nice piece of music, that is every step of it is sitting on a very set structure. And songwriters and composers are very aware of the different effects, different elements of music create, because it's a very old discipline and it's been fine-tuned. And so let's go over the basics. These are the basic ingredients as far as we're concerned. We got rhythm, tempo, melody, harmony, and key. And as Sunny also mentioned earlier, going through this course is going to be more about being creative within limited frameworks. So I'm going to be introducing a bunch of things, but it's not going to be it's not going to be all the examples or all the possibilities that are, let's say, in tempo or harmony or key or whatnot. Okay, so rhythm is basically the arrangement of musical sounds within a period of time. Rhythm of a song or a piece of music is something that is static. Whatever the rhythm of a particular piece of music is, that doesn't change. What can change is tempo. So tempo is the speed at which the sound travels through music. So one example I'd like to to give to those who are more visual is that imagine a scene in a movie. Rhythm would be the actions of the participating actors and actresses that are in the movie. So you can speed up the movie and slow down the movie. The relative movement of their bodies and what's happening in the scene isn't going to change. It's just going to speed up and slow down. So that's a visual way of for me to tell you the difference between rhythm and tempo. And of course, as we know, because we already finished writing a limerick and we talked about mood and vibe and messages, already these are two ingredients that composers and musicians use to create different emotions, to convey different feelings. And then we have melody. So, I mean, this is fundamentally just a musical statement. In idea is very simple, but in execution, obviously we have melodies that are, let's say, more memorable than others, although that's not an argument for it being better, but again, it depends what the purpose of the melody is. Harmony is the layering of sound. So the visual equivalent of that would be, in a way, it could be color. So adding particular harmonies to a melody gives it a different a color as or a different vibe. And then we have key. And so in Western music, we have 12 major keys and 12 minor keys. And again, there are a lot of things you can do with that, but for our purposes, we're just going to keep it to these fundamentals. So here we have these 5 basic ingredients that we're going to use to create our song. And I might be revisiting some of these slides, but I just want to make sure that I have time to get through it, because I know fundamentally our goal is to create this song, and I know that's the really exciting part for all of us. Moving on to the next slide. So we have time signatures here. We have 2 time signatures. Of course, we have a lot more time signatures than these, but for our purposes and for the purpose of this course, I've decided just to go with 2 time signatures just to keep things simple. And believe me when I say there's so much you can do with just these 2 time signatures. What time signatures do is create a sense of, well, not so much accents, but where the weight of the beat falls. And as I will demonstrate later, that is also another way to express certain vibes or emotions, which is why you see certain time signatures dominating in certain styles of music, such as dancing music having overwhelmingly certain time signatures, or pop music having certain time signatures, or marching music has a particular time signature. All right, so these are the 2 we'll be working on. And basically, as I demonstrate the difference between them and you hear where the weight falls, you can sort of decide when you write a song, given what we're writing, which time signature seems better. And of course, as music gets more complicated, it's up to the jurisdiction of the songwriter to use multiple time signatures in a song. So that's also a possibility. Multiple keys, multiple rhythms, obviously. Okay, and tempo, I broke it down into 3 parts. And again, these metrics are based on just standardized tempos in classical music. So we have 45 to 70 beats per minute, considered slow. Medium tempo, 74 to 100 beats per minute. And fast, 110 to 140. Of course, again, the range is not fully arbitrarily, but really just a limited range that's been selected. And as we all know, tempo also has a lot to do with the kind of vibe a piece of music gives off. So these are all things that we have to use collectively in order to create whatever sense we're trying to get through. Okay, so let's maybe pause here and do some demonstrations. I'll keep the demonstrations simple. Like I decided to just use the Twinkle Twinkle melody. Everyone knows that it's straightforward. We can do a lot with that one. And that will be for the demonstration for what we're doing right now. So when you listen to the standard Twinkle Twinkle, it obviously abides by it has all these things. Right? So it has a set rhythm, although a very simple rhythm, but you can change the rhythm. So let's say this was what the accompaniment is playing, and the right hand, the standard version is going. But of course, without changing the tempo, I can change the rhythm. So nothing's changed. The harmony hasn't changed. The tempo hasn't changed. There's a variation of rhythm, gives a different vibe. But we can speed it up. Or very slow. Okay, so I won't play the whole thing for that one, but as you can imagine, it creates a completely different vibe. Melody, as you can see, is very central. So if I change the melody, like it changes everything. I mean, that melody of that song is very central to it. So that much we can't change. We could do other things with melody, as we'll get to. We can arrange some things, but the core of the melody can't change too much. The harmony, we can add, let's say, so instead of going to this, we could go to this, just adding a different color. We can go. So we can just add extra chords, substitute some chords. It'll fundamentally be the same song, but it will just make it that much, I guess you could say, more interesting, depending on what you want to do. Although, again, I don't want to equate complexity with necessarily being better. It really depends what the purpose of the music is. Some of my favorite songs are very simple in harmonic structure. But we'll get to see where the trade-off is. You trade something, you got to substitute it with something else. Or in time signature, so Twinkle Twinkle is in 4/4 time, but what if it wasn't 3/4 time? Can you hear the difference? I mean, you know that song is Twinkle Twinkle, but it's got a different kind of, the weight is distributed differently in that song. And also we can talk, I forgot to talk about the key. Oh, sorry. Keep wanting to go into that major, but yeah, so that sounds kind of ominous, but that's just, yeah, that's the, well, you know what the funny thing is it's almost, we have some level of innate sense of distinguishing the core of a piece from its key. So even when I have really young students who know Twinkle Twinkle, who've never heard the minor version, as soon as I play the minor version, they know it's Twinkle Twinkle, even though the harmonies are very different. The vibe is different. I haven't changed the tempo. I haven't changed the style of playing it. I literally just changed the key from major to minor. They'll know it's Twinkle Twinkle. So there is something to be said about us separating all these different elements of music, and so be able to substitute of other things to create different effects. Okay, now we're going to melody. This is where I want to employ 4 out of the 7 modes that we have in Western music. But let's start off with just the 2. So we have 7 modes, but the 2 mode that we, all of us know, most of us know when we listen to music, is a piece of music is either major or minor. So you got a major scale or minor, right? And that really has to do with the distance from one tone to the next tone. That's all it is. It's a series of intervals, as we call it in music, between one pitch to the next pitch. So major, this is a formula for major. And this is fundamental. No matter what instrument you play, no matter what you do, if you follow this formula, you will create a major sound, a major scale. Now, the one thing I want to go over and for us to understand are degrees. Okay, when you play a 1 octave diatonic scale, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tones, and of course, going back eighth, going back to the tonic again, right? So it's very important to remember that eighth tone, because when we write a melody, we're going to be using that's going to be our sort of building material, building blocks that we're going to create the melody with. So whether we decide to stay in major, which is we call Ionian, and I have examples here. I have them ready to go too, but I think I'm gonna go through the slides before I play those a little bit of those clips. I don't want to run out of time, but we know most of these songs. So Hey Jude, think about Hey Jude. I don't want you to worry too much about the technicality. I want you to get a sense of what a major song, what kind of vibe a major song has. So that Hey Jude will be one example of many songs that are major. So then we're moving to Mixolydian mode, which is from a major family, and it's really just a major scale with a raised sixth. So you can hear it's the same thing, but just a little bit of a twist, right? You got major, Mixolydian, right? Can you hear that? Just one note difference creates a different vibe. I'm just going to quickly. Okay. Yes, I said 5. Okay, so we have, now moving on to minor. Minor is, again, following this pattern. So this one we can hear a more obvious difference because there's more done to that scale. There's more changes happening in that scale. And of course, when we lower the sixth, we got the Dorian mode. Now Dorian and Mixolydian, these two are different versions of their sister scales. And the way I wanted to demonstrate this is by this slide. So look at major. If you look at major as Coca-Cola and minor as Pepsi, Mixolydian would be like Coke Cherry, and then Dorian would be like, Pepsi with a twist of lime. So it's fundamentally the same thing, but just a little bit of a twist. And if you listen to those examples that I have listed here, you'll hear there's just something. You listen to something like the Skyboat song as an example, or Scarborough Fair. It has a certain vibe to it that makes it a little distinct from just a minor song. And that is all because of that one difference in the scale, one note difference. Okay, so that's how I would visually explain the difference between these 4 modes. Of course, like I said, we have a lot more modes, but the way, let's say I would want to run this class, and the way I would want us to figure out is, let's stick to major or minor first. Let's say we agree that we want to turn our limerick into a major sounding music or a minor sounding. We'll agree on that. And then once we do that, then we can put the twist on it, make it either Mixolydian or Dorian, and then we can decide which one we like, as opposed to trying to give each one of them equal footing. But I just thought it would be cool to have a little bit of a twist version of those. Okay. So then we have harmony. And again, don't worry about these terms. This is what I've already went over. So these are all the degrees that I played. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They all have names. They all have corresponding, in a major key, corresponding chords that go along with them. In a minor key, corresponding chords that go along with them. Some of these chords can be substituted. We can change them. And again, you personally, if this is beyond your understanding or even interest at this point, that's fine. We'll work together and we'll create something interesting. But just so you know that these are all the options that we have. So let's give an example that again, with music, demonstration is everything, because once you hear it, it makes more sense. So everybody knows the doo-wop progression. It's also known as the 50s progression. It was really big in the 50s. Right? So we got heart and soul. So very, very classic kind of progression. And what I have here is we could do that progression, but substitute this degree with that. Now, I can explain later why, but let's just listen to it. So this is the standard doo-wop chord progression. The substitute. Can you hear it? Just a little bit of a difference, but that's called chord substitution. That's what we can do. So again, I just want to make sure I leave some time for us creating it. This is called the circle of fifths. It's been a while since I took art class, but I believe there's like a similar thing for color. So look at it as sort of like a circle of colors, and how there's a correlation between different colors and warmer colors and colder colors. So these are all the keys that we can use in music. Fundamentally though, we're just, as far as I expect from the participants in the sports, is just to come up with an idea, and then we can play along with that idea. If it happens to sit anywhere on this circle, that's fine. We don't have to say we want to write something in F sharp minor. Like it doesn't, we're not going to go that route. Okay. And then moving on to this example. So again, demonstration is really a good way for you to understand what I've talked about so far. So I decided to pick a melody that I would imagine most of you know, from Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And then we put that melody to all these tests, and then we're gonna sing it. I'm gonna play and sing it in all these 4 versions, and you can hear the difference it makes when you give it that twist of Mixolydian, when you give it that twist of a Dorian, what happens to it. So this is the standard one. Okay, so we all know that melody. And so that original melody is in a major mode, is in the Ionian mode, okay? Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I? Okay, we all know that. That sounds familiar to us. But let's give it a cherry twist, as I demonstrated in the picture. So that was a Coca-Cola version. Now, all we're doing is we're just lowering the 7th degree, which in this case, instead of a B, we're going to have B flat. We're not going to have B. That's all it is. So the original Somewhere Over the Rainbow was written in this. Now we're going to write it. That's all we're doing. Now that one note is not going to just change the melody, but it's also going to change the harmony too, because harmony and melody go hand in hand. It's kind of like you're not going to walk into someone else's barbecue. You're going to go to your family's barbecue or your friend's barbecue. You can't just show up where nobody knows you. That's the same thing. The melody is the guest. The harmony is the hosting party. So they have to be so that's why it's going to change the harmony too. So we have Mixolydian version. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I? Could you hear the difference? Now, whether you liked it or not, that's a different argument. But that's what happens to Somewhere Over the Rainbow if you make it into a Mixolydian version. Okay? Clearly, it changes the vibe. Just that one note changes so much, okay? And that's the important thing for you to realize about music, and I'm sure it's the same thing for poetry. It doesn't take that much to really change the complete vibe and mood of a song. Okay, now we're done with Coke and Coke Cherry. We're going to Pepsi. We're going to minor. So that's Aeolian. Your standard minor scale. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I? Okay? Different. I think not as odd as the Mixolydian. Maybe because we're more used to minor and all these changes, possibly. But yeah, that will be the minor version. So a lot more changes happen to this compared to the Mixolydian, believe it or not. Now we're going to go to that Pepsi Lime, the Dorian. So it's really, this was the version you just heard. This was the Aeolian. The Dorian's going to be, again, just one note. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I? Okay? Is it less intimidating now? Can you hear the difference? Like all those musical jargons aside, now you hear one thing being consistent, which is the melody. When you put throw those different modes at it, and I didn't change the melody. I didn't change the speed. I didn't change the way I played the chords. There's so much else I could have done to this melody to change the vibe. So you're absolutely right. Different modes offer different feelings. And the other thing, and I know we're running really close to time. Thankfully, this is my last slide. But the other thing I want to say is going back to the weight where it falls in the beat. So let's say we pick a song. Something could be 4/4 and major and have the same tempo. So we have, but there's a clear difference between this one and if I go, you see that? So same chords, same arrangement of the harmonies, but just different distribution of weight. Right? That kind of stuff makes a difference too. Now, there's just so much we can do. I rather move on to the creation part. I suggest if Sunny can also engage the mic, because I think we should do this part together. So this is where we are. This is the limerick that we all created. I found a way to spend my time, and it does not cost a dime. I kept my smile despite this trial, reflecting on a simple rhyme. Wow, I love this. This is really good. Okay, so first thing that I think I want to get out of the way is actually, I don't want to start from the simpler stuff to get those out of the way. I want us to agree on the mode. And when I say mode, let's just say major or minor. We'll worry about the twists later. So I'll throw this out to the chat. Are we feeling this as do we want to have a major approach to this or a minor approach to this? Okay, so let's give 20 seconds for everyone. Okay, this should be easier because it's an either or thing. So I'm just gonna go completely based on.
We're gonna end up with like a 50-50 split and then.
Yeah. Are you taking time on this? I forgot to put like a timer.
It's 5:14.
No. Like on like a timer. Like I kind of want to stop.
Oh, just how long? Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, because
we're seeing a lot of majors.
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of major. And again, folks, I do want to say and I could provide examples for this, that major does not have to be happy and minor does not have to be sad. I could give plenty of examples to the contrary. There are a lot of minor songs that are happy. There are a lot of major songs that are sad. Examples I often provide is most of Hank Williams' music is very sad in nature, but it's all written in major. A lot of Middle Eastern music is in minor keys, but they're all festive music. All the festive music, Middle Eastern music is minor keys. So yeah, Mixolydian. Okay, so let's just go with major. So I have major written down. The other thing I want us to figure out, I think would be easy, is time signature. So 4/4, 3/4, and again, think weight. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4/4 time. 3/4 time is 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Do you hear the difference? 4/4 has two weights. One stronger being on the first beat, and the second strongest being on the third beat. 3/4 has one strong beat, and that's it. Okay? So, okay. I got some 3/4. Wow, surprisingly.
There's a lot of 3/4s.
I know.
I'm gonna set a timer and give everyone like 10 more.
No, I'm a very odd time signature person myself. A lot of stuff I write happens to be in odd time signatures too, because I feel like it's just got this swing to them. Okay. Waltz. That's right. Okay, let's go with 3/4 time. Sorry if I'm just making quick decisions. I want to make sure we have time to write this, and most people pick 3/4 time. Okay, so major, we have 3/4 time. Okay. Harmony, not too concerned right now. I'll keep it as simple as possible. But this is the fun part, but also the most nerve-wracking part, because I really want to get your input on this one. I don't want to have to dictate this, but I want to come up with a melody, like with a motif, as we say, like an idea that gets us going. And again, maybe you can use significant numbers, because oftentimes if you're a nerdy composer, you can use numbers to come up with your melody. As I said, everything in your scale is laid out in a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Since we already picked major, first degree, second, third, fourth, fifth. So oftentimes people use their birthdays. So for example, I was born on May 29th, 1984. However you want to arrange that, for me, that would be 5, 2, 9, 1, 9, 8, 4. Right? So that would be so we can come up with those kind of numbers, or any sort of number that's significant to you. I don't know how well that's going to go, because everyone's going to have their own significant number. But so Sunny, I think they're asking if you could write the lyrics in the chat box. Oh, thank you so much. So, but let's count the first line. Let's do that. I found a way to spend my time. So that's 8. That's a full scale. I found a way to spend my time. I mean, climbing up a major scale will give us the first line. Again, it doesn't have to be that way. The other way it could do is we could have a pickup. So, I found a way to spend my time, like an arpeggio. I mean, there's just so many places we can go. So I would say, since we have 8, the first, and everyone gets one number. The first 8 numbers that are punched in there, I'm going to use it as the melody, no matter how absurd it sounds. Oh boy, 6. Okay.
I like this. In poetry, there's a form of writing called chance operations, which is you sort of let a randomness take control.
Right. And of course, you can't blame anyone but the laws of randomness for whatever comes.
It's like the laws of randomness allow you to make connections you wouldn't normally think to.
Right. So Georgia, I'm just going to pick your first number, because everyone gets one number. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I don't know what I found. We literally are missing one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we got our 8 numbers.
Okay.
So let me just write that down. We got 6, 7, 2, 4, 3, 1, 3, 4. Okay, so okay, that sounds kind of eerie. Let's listen to that again. One more time. It really wants to go to the 4th. So, I found, let me write it down because I have to look at 2 screens. I found,
Marisol has a question. She wants to know if they're allowed to sing a suggestion.
yeah. So, I mean, let's see. So we have, I found a way to spend my time. So even though we start in the key of C, we want to go to the 4th degree of that key. So can we sing a suggestion? So yeah, we can. I'm just wondering, that's going to be too messy with Zoom. So let's go with this method. I feel like this method would be the most efficient way to come up with something. So let's move on to the second line. I found, nice. I found a way to I found a way to spend my time. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Second line, we have 7. The first 7 numbers have it. And by the way, if there's something that goes outside of by the end of it, the song has to be resolved. If it doesn't get resolved, I'll just resolve it. Okay. 5, 8, 4, 6, 3 more, 5, 2, 1 more, 7. Okay. And it does not. We got our numbers. Cost a dime. So this is our second line. So I think I will replace the dime 7 with 1 just because it kind of feels like it should be resolved there. And we always have to resolve traditionally on the tonic. So whoever, that's the kind of stuff that can happen in the chorus, is that sometimes if I challenge your decision, I'll give a justification on why it has to go to that. So dime at this point was on 7. I'll put it on 1 so we have some sort of a resolution. So the melody for the second one is but I want to go okay, it resolves. So it goes, and it does not cost a dime. So you see that? I think that's a pretty fair challenge. So I'll change that 7 to a 1. So I found a way to spend my time, and it does not cost a dime. So what I would do, I mean, right now there's just simply not enough time. I will write these out, then you could fill it with chords and harmonies along the way. We're not even at the stage of putting it into 3/4 time signature. So let's see. So the way I hear this is I would be a pickup note. Da, so it goes da da da. See, if you want to go 3/4 time, I would be a pickup note. Da 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 da. You hear that? So the I starts at the pickup, goes 1, 2. I found a way to spend my time. So it goes, I found a way to spend my time. I found a way to spend my time. So now we have our 3/4 time. We have our melody that we collectively came up with, and we ascribe the chords that go along with it in the simplest form. The chords could be a lot more, I guess you could say, interesting, but it's still so yeah. So I mean, even the first line, let's go over that again. So let's just go higher. I found a way to spend my time. See that? That's the first line. I'm just doing this in the key of C. But again, that's something that just can be changed because it's all relative. And now, the next line. So this one has one less. So we have to extend maybe one of the words. Now, as you can see, even something this small will take some time because, and the main thing is that because we want to keep this as engaging as possible. Of course, you could just sit behind this and start singing and coming up with melody. It doesn't have to be like this, but I think this is a very efficient way for everyone to be involved in the process. Even doing the first line, I think we got a good sense of how this will go on to sort of go back and forth. And of course, even when we have our final product, or what I call a first draft, even when we have our first draft, we can still do tweaking of little things here. We can replace one long note with, substitute a long note with another note, do all sorts of things until we have a very final product. It's kind of like when you're chiseling a statue, you get the form, you get the basic form out, and then you do your detail work. So right now we're just chiseling out the form. That's what's happening. I mean, we're out of time, but Sunny and I will be here. And again, I'm happy to even stick around if you want to finish this and see what it sounds like. I just don't want to hold people longer than the time that we're promised. And of course, we can answer questions. As you can see, I think no matter where you're coming from, musically or as far as poetry, there's something to be learned in this class. And of course, this is just the bare bones stuff, writing a simple three-chord song on a limerick. It could be a lot more involved, like the sky's the limit. Okay, so I'm not sure if at this stage I'll pass it on to Sunny or Mary. Let me just
That's okay. I was originally, if we had time left, we were going to do a reflection exercise just so we could feel some closure and reflect, but instead we use the time, I think, wisely right up to the end, all content, no filler. So I'll just turn it back over to Mary because she has some closing remarks for us. But like Sina said, we're happy to stick around a little bit later if anyone does want to ask further questions. Also, our contact information is on the last slide, but we're also just in the Ryerson directory. So if at any time you want to chat further about poetry or music, feel free to email us and we would be happy to talk further. Mary?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sunny. And thank you both Sunny and Sina. This is a really, really unique learning experience today. And it was a way for us to really look at some of the feelings and emotions that we all may be feeling right now and channel them through a really creative and fun outlet, really by putting some of those words into a fun lyric or limerick and putting it to music. So thank you both very much for this learning experience today. I also wanted to thank everyone for attending the webinar today. We really appreciate you being with us today for I Write the Songs workshop. And I'm sure that some of you may be planning to attend some of the other upcoming workshops as well. If you are, please, you can register on our site, which is ryerson.ca/CE/programs50+. The information, I think, will be also in the comments section. We are also going to be sending out a follow-up email within 48 hours to everyone with the information and to get your feedback as well on how you enjoyed today's workshop with Sunny and Sina. And if you would like to see more, we definitely want to hear your thoughts in the survey.